The other day, an electric utility in Australia suffered a cyber attack, and certainly we need to discuss this case in order to get to the bottom of what actually happened. So let's check the news. This is the Daily Telegraph, and they tell us that CS Energy, which is the utility in this case, was hit by a Chinese cyber attack that almost cost 3 million homes power. Let's break here for a second. What did I tell you about the media coverage of these types of incidents? You will always learn more about what did not happen than about the facts, what actually did happen. So in this case, 3 million homes did not lose power, but they just want to stretch your imagination and certainly get your ad revenue or get your clicks in order to make ad revenue. So that almost cost 3 million homes power, but it did not. A major cyber attack on Australia has been revealed with Chinese hackers believed to be behind the potentially disastrous attempt. Oh, really? Now we are learning. It's not... There is no evidence that this actually was caused by Chinese hackers. It's simply believed. Okay, let's move on. Millions of homes were moments away from losing power after a major energy network was hit by a ransomware attack believed to have been the work of Chinese hackers. So now it gets more and more interesting. Here we learn, it's just they're putting in the facts bit by bit. Now we learn that this was a ransomware attack. Okay, that's interesting. And millions of homes were moments away. Is that true? Is there any evidence for that? I don't see it. Believed to have been the work of Chinese hackers. So that's a repetition from the previous paragraph. CS Energy was hit by the attack on Saturday in what the CEO has described as a worrying, growing trend. Let's stop here for a second. This is one of the preferred buzzwords that you are hearing, both from cybersecurity vendors and also from the media. They're always suggesting, well, this is a growing trend, so you better watch this carefully. When there are actually no numbers to confirm or to back up that it actually would be a trend in a statistically meaningful sense. So it's simply like, there was one attack last year, now there is another attack, oh, that's a trend. No, certainly it's not a trend, it's just another attack attempt, because in this case, again, the attack wasn't successful, at least as far as the power outage is concerned. According to the Telegraph, the attack was stopped at the last minute before it had the potential to shut down 2 major thermal coal plants. So again, this is another tiny piece of information. It was the power plants at risk were 2 major thermal coal plants. We didn't know that before, and the attack was stopped at the last minute. Well, why? Give us some additional information, but they don't care. They don't have this information, and they don't bother to do any reporting on this. If the attack had been successful, which it was not, so if it had been successful, the fact that they're reporting here is it was unsuccessful. And then 3,500 megawatts of power would have been taken out of the grid, enough for between 1.4 and 3 million homes. So another piece of information. So these 2 power plants obviously service between 1.4 and 3 million homes. That's interesting because that's a difference of 100% or more than 100%. And certainly in the headline, they focus on the absolute worst case scenario, which I doubt could ever have materialized because, how do you explain this vast spectrum here between 1.4 and 3 million. So that's in a way that's ridiculous. And the funny thing is what I really find noteworthy, that this is a prime example where you have evidence that the journalist has no desire to actually go into the facts because it would have been easy to verify, 3,500 megawatts. I was thinking for 2 thermal power plants. That's a bit on the high side. And if you check out what these power plants are, so the first one is Cogan Creek. It has an output of 750 megawatt. And the second one is Callide, which has an output of 1510 megawatts. And if you sum this up, you don't arrive at 3,500 megawatts. But obviously, the journalist in this case just didn't bother to do a simple Google check or Wikipedia check and to just get some idea of what might have been going on. So they just throw all these nonsensical numbers at you without the least desire to actually check the facts. CEO Andrew Bild said the company worked quickly to isolate the corporate network from the Callide and Cogan Creek power stations so that generators could escape impact. This is probably the best part of it. So here is the CEO of this utility, and he has the nerve to tell the public, yes, and just when the shit hit the fan, then our network guys, they scrambled and they segregated the networks so that the operational networks in those 2 coal-fired plants were unaffected. So this nutcase does not realize that he is admitting a lack of governance, because obviously they should have segregated their networks years ago. This is really, he's making a laughingstock out of himself, and I can only hope that he gets fired by the board after this really ridiculous statement. So, Andrew, that's not good. You should have made sure, you as the CEO with your oversight, that you should have executed with your governance, you should have made sure that those networks had been segregated a long time ago. What else do we have? Mr. Bild said the focus was now on restoring the network security. Yeah, well, you should have done that earlier, Andrew. No, that you should have raised your network security many years ago. CS Energy moved quickly to contain this incident by segregating the corporate network from other internal networks and enacting business continuity processes. Well, that's such a great idea, but why didn't you do it earlier, like many years ago, when somebody actually built all those networks, and put the plugs in the switches? That is so bizarre that they're committing now in the public, in the face of probably a serious attack attempt, I don't know, because we don't get any facts, that they are admitting in public that they didn't really bother about network security all these years when those plants have been built and operating. Unfortunately, cyber events are a growing trend in Australia and overseas. So it's not just our problem in CS Energy, it's this growing trend. What can you do? So we have to live with that. No, probably you don't. If you would have done a better job at segregating your network and caring for some baseline cybersecurity and governance. Here is another good one. So this is Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews, who is also asked for a statement on this incident. And she says cybersecurity is her #1 priority. Congratulations. Also, I have to do another break here. This is so funny because when an incident happens, government officials are eager to tell you what a big deal cybersecurity is for them. And if you think it through, certainly it does not make any sense, because if it actually was the case, then we wouldn't have arrived at this situation, because then the government would have made sure with regulation, for example, that a power utility would not have been able to arrive at such a poor state of cybersecurity for their operations. So that totally does not make sense. In other words, either this government official is lying or is just doesn't care about, is totally incompetent of what they are doing. Because if cybersecurity is such a high priority, you would most likely approach the field a little bit differently, and then situations like this one would not happen, at least not with the portrayed grave state of affairs. Earlier this year, she said cybersecurity was her #1 priority. Well, you know, we don't see that. I'm sorry, Karen Andrews. We don't see the results for that. And therefore, your claim is simply not credible. Okay, and then there, in the last paragraph, you know, they're spinning it again against China. And this brings us to the next article. Like, now we are entering the second act. And this one they go all the way. This is from the Daily News, Bolly Insight from the Daily News. They go all the way to fear porn. So, hackers from China are plotting to turn off lights in Australia after close brushing in Queensland. This is also an immediate result of that event with CS Energy. And, you know, look at this fear porn. Hackers from China. And what you see is President Xi. So, you know, for the very dumb person, this suggests by visual association, this guy is behind that. This guy wants to turn our lights off. And let's see how they spin this. Power plants, hospitals, and traffic lights may all be easily shut down by Chinese hackers. Well, that might be the case if you don't do your due diligence and governmental oversight. But how does it relate to this recent case? Exploratory.com, blah, blah, blah. The government is enacting raw power. No, so here we go. Hackers came close to shutting down Queensland power company CS Energy. And why is this bizarre? Think about it for a second. Why is this bizarre? So first of all, we know already that so far there is apparently no direct evidence that it was Chinese hackers. But we also know that this was a ransomware attack. Unfortunately, the journalists did not bother or find the time to research what the ransom demand was. They did not bother to research if it was paid or not. We don't know about that, but it seems to be the common or the consensus that it was ransomware. So, do we have any historical evidence that nation states would engage in ransomware schemes? If I stretch my memory here, I think the only case on the record affected North Korea when they actually used ransomware, you know, to gain additional funding for their nuclear program or whatever. So I'm not aware of any documented case where China would have engaged in a ransomware scheme in order to actually extort money. So, in other words, a state-sponsored ransomware orchestrated by President Xi himself, that is, in my point of view, that is just not credible. And I believe they are just jumping to this conclusion here, which I find particularly worrying because of the ongoing tensions between Australia and China. So what we're seeing here is they are simply putting fuel into the fire of these tensions, and they're just abusing this really minor ransomware case that happened with CS Energy to just fuel the fire. And now we're getting to the last act from the Straits Times. And so this is like a couple of days later. And what do we learn here? Ransomware attack on Australian utility claimed by Russian-speaking criminals. We didn't expect that, did we? We take it that now it's getting more evident who the ransomware operator behind that case is, and apparently it's not a Chinese ransomware gang, and especially not the Chinese government. So one of the most prolific Russian-speaking ransomware gangs has claimed credit for a weekend attack on Australian electric utilities, serving millions of people. Australian media had reported blah, 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 CS Energy, so this is our case, and those reports, blah, blah, blah. Now, here is the kicker. There is currently no indication that the cyber incident was a state-based attack. The statement cited CS Energy CEO Andrew Bills as declaring. So now our good friend Andrew tells us there is absolutely no evidence for this, that this is the state-sponsored attack. There is no evidence that China was behind it. And the Russian ransomware group make their claim credible because they publish data that they apparently have copied or stolen from the systems at CS Energy. Conti listed CS Energy on its leak site, and how interesting is that, right? So it's a credible claim, and all the speculation about China wanting to, just turn off the lights in Australia, all those speculations turned out as total bullshit and hyperbolic. And if you're like me, you're no longer surprised by such a turn of events, because the reporting on these cases has become so bizarre. It's the narrative that the media wants to push is simply, well, a disaster was just a second away, and just imagine what could have happened, blah, blah, blah. For the media, the motivation is clear. They just want you to click like a lab rat. When you hear certain terms about this growing trend and critical infrastructure, then you have been trained to click on the link and in order to open the article, and that generates revenue for the media. Similar motivation certainly holds true for cybersecurity companies or vendors, which also use this type of sensationalistic coverage in order to promote their wares. Anyhow, so that's what I wanted to share. Another nothing burger, which is completely blown out of proportion. And just let me know in the comments below what you think, if I'm being too critical here, or if there might be something to it. But in any case, I urge you to always read these sensationalistic articles with a grain of salt, or best case with a jar of salt, because in many cases they just turn out to be fabrication. And again, just remember, focus on this reporting on what did not happen, and try to separate that from the facts. Okay, that was what I wanted to share for you about this incident and the reporting on it. Just to let me know what you think in the comments.